Thanks for coming to my talk, everybody. I know half of you, and to the rest. So I wanted to start out, I have some notes. I'll go as long as you guys can stay awake, all right? Who here does not live in New Hampshire? Raise your hand if you could. All right, very good. So the rest of you live in New Hampshire. All right, so I'm gonna direct more towards the people that live here already in New Hampshire. So as the introduction stated, we moved to New Hampshire in 2009. My wife, Susan's over here. Hi, Susan. In 2009 from the Pennsylvania area, so outside of Philly. And I won't go over those other things, but I'm running for a 5th term in the New Hampshire House and hope to win re-election again. Here's what I'm not asking you to do. This is what I'm not asking you to do. I'm not asking you to sign up for my newsletter, buy my book, listen to my podcast, contribute to my think tank, or secede from the union. I'm not asking you to do any of those things. But what I am asking you to do, and the theme of my talk is making New Hampshire the lifeboat through effective political action. So I'm going to try to make a case for why political action is required for New Hampshire to be the beacon of liberty, or the lifeboat. So what I'm asking you to do is let's work together to make New Hampshire the freest state in the Union and in the world. And we're working on that. So are there any other state reps in the room? Usually there's a few. Michael Constable, any others? All right, thank you for your service, Michael. Oh, I'll get that. All right, so I'm gonna get into, these are my personal opinions. You're free to disagree, and you're also free to be wrong. So I just wanna make that clear from the beginning. So what is the point of the Free State Project? And I'm gonna ask that with the founder in the room here. Sorry, Jason. Thank you. So this is my opinion. The point of the Free State Project is to advance state policy in the direction of liberty. That is in my opinion, that is the entire point. And it's to make sure liberty persists somewhere in the world, that it doesn't get snuffed out, right? And the age that we're living in, that's quite possible with the tools that tyrants have available to them now. So it's the Free State Project. So why choose a state and not some other jurisdiction? Why not the Free Town Project, or the Free Island Project, or the Free County Project? It's because a state has sovereignty in our federal system. And the interesting thing about New Hampshire, and I know many in the room know this, but we're a Dillon's Rule state, which means that all authority in the state comes from the Golden Dome in Concord. So that all authority comes from that Golden Dome to the rest of the state. So the counties and the cities and the towns can only do what Concord says they're allowed to do. And that's different than other states. In other states, the counties can make laws and the cities can make laws. Not so in New Hampshire. So the state has sovereignty in the federalist system, and in New Hampshire, all authority flows from Concord. So to me, that is the point of the Free State Project, is to utilize those tools to advance liberty in New Hampshire. Do you guys remember the pledge for the Free State Project? And it was like it was a checkbox on a website, basically. But you know, when you took it, you probably, if you took it, it was a solemn pledge, I would say, to most of us. And it had the word government in the pledge. And I think a lot of people may not focus on that. But it's once you moved here, it's to create a society in which the maximum role of government is the protection of individuals' rights to life, liberty, and property. So the pledge involves government. Let's focus on New Hampshire being the lifeboat, right? So if we have this tool called state sovereignty, and we can shore up the state in case of turbulent times, which may be ahead in the next few years or decades, however long. What does a lifeboat need? So a lifeboat needs proper supplies and provisions. So if you're going to be in your lifeboat for any period of time, you need the things that will keep you alive and prosperous in the lifeboat. When it comes to the state, these are the things that I try to focus on at the state level. It's the ideas of that the state needs energy, that we need commerce, that we need to protect our ability to defend ourselves. We may need our own currency at some point. And we need trade with other nations and other states. So, that list continues, but we need to focus on those things now, is my point. We need to get the lifeboat ready. And so that's what we're trying to do, is work together to make New Hampshire the beacon of liberty. So I'm going to pick on some other avenues that the Free State Project has taken in the past. I said I moved here in 2009. We had been coming up, I think, since 2004, visiting the state. It took us 5 years to move. But that was 15 years ago that we did move. So we've been here a while. And there's been waves of Free State efforts going back. And I think it's good for maybe some of the newcomers to realize that other things have been tried, okay? So there was a wave of anarchists that moved up for the Free State Project. And those people, there's probably some of them still here and some are my friends, but I'm still gonna pick on them. They thought they could click their heels and make government disappear, okay? To me, that is not realistic. It's not realistic. There was a whole wave of voting is violence. If you vote, you're being violent. So we're not gonna vote, right? To me, that's silly. If you knew my background and how I grew up, there's even more to that. My conclusion that voting is a necessity. There was a wave of civil disobedience. Some of that was funny. Some like the drinking game in Keene City Hall, where everybody brought in like water in a beer bottle and drank every time they said, I think, master plan or something. They had a drinking game. Or holding a butt of pot in the Keene police offices, like different things. Like we've all kind of seen it come and go. But that had no lasting effect. Other than a few particular cases, there were some judicial precedents set. But other than a few specific cases, it had no lasting effect. It kind of was here and gone. And this is my favorite. Keith, I'm an outside the system activist. Has anybody heard that? I'm an outside the system activist. I don't do politics, I'm outside the system. Nobody's outside the system. When those people did civil disobedience and got a court summons, do you think they were outside the system? They had to go to court. They were inside the system, surprise, right? So those things have been tried. The political process in New Hampshire it's a slow process. It's not fast and fun. It's relentless incrementalism. Relentless incrementalism. And it gets easier the more allies we have within state government. And our group of allies are growing. Not just people that moved here, but people that already lived here for generations. There are lots of liberty-leaning people in state government. So small, consistent steps towards our goals. They're more effective than trying to change everything at once. And when you try to change everything at once, you get backlash. And sometimes you end up going in the opposite direction. So boil the frog to make a tasty dish, right? That's kind of what we're doing. So I want to talk a little bit about libertarian, small L, blind spots. And there are a few. And I have these too, so I had to learn this myself. So the value of culture. So culture is a very important thing. Culture is about storytelling. It's about collective purpose, right? It's about symbols and rituals and traditions. Those are all things that culture provides for people. So an individualist, sometimes we tend to think that we're on an island all by ourselves. And maybe we are, who knows? You live off grid in the woods, right? Maybe somebody does, but Most of us live in a society, and that society has all those things, and those symbols and traditions and the culture helps direct the rest of society in a particular direction, right? So the live free or die state, that's a culture of liberty, right? So we want to plug in and amplify that. The value of institutions. An institution is like an organism that lives longer than people do. It's a group organized for collective action that continues on whether we're involved with it or not, right? And that institution can be guided in certain directions over time, like a ship, like a big ship. And one of the oldest institutions in New Hampshire is the state government. I think it was incorporated 1788 or somewhere around there. But that institution is going to live probably longer than we do. And it already has lived longer than we have, but it will probably continue on in some form. Another blind spot is hierarchies. So in any group of people, there are naturally hierarchies that form, right? There are people at the bottom, people at the top, and people can move up and down the hierarchy as they gain and lose status. So there are some blind spots that we kind of need to, that other people sort of naturally resonate with, that we're sort of we don't really see it because we're too focused on, individual liberty, which is important. All right, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the blind spots, and now I want to talk about how you can transform yourself into a politician. Every single one of you here can transform yourself into a politician. Going back to the things that I heard in the beginning, I don't do politics. Politics is a waste of time. In most parts of the country, that statement is true, but in New Hampshire, that is not true. Politics is not a waste of time. Politics is in the room with us right now. Politics is a natural part of the human condition. If you slept in a tent last night with somebody else besides yourself, right? Anytime there's more than one person in a situation, there's some kind of politicking going on, right? Like, where do you want to go for dinner tonight, right? There's usually some kind of simple jostling of position to sort of move the group in a particular direction. It just so happens with the democratic process, representative government, it's been kind of formalized, and it only happens, once every 2 or 4 years. But it happens all the time. So getting good at politicking in an honest way, not in a malicious way, is a good skill for everybody to develop, right? So if you think about it that way, it's a little bit of a different perspective. So running for state office, advancing state policy is the goal, right? And maybe you're not in a position to run yourself for a state office. Or maybe, you want to wait till you retire, or the kids are out of school, or whatever that point is. There are other people in New Hampshire who believe strongly in liberty, who are trying to attain that position, and you can help them achieve that position. So one organization that's good to plug into is the New Hampshire Liberty Alliance. So see Melissa Cream if you're interested in that. But there are ways to help get more of us and our allies, right, our broader allies, elected into state government. Sometimes that means running for a local office as sort of like practice. So you run for a local office, maybe the library trustee or the cemetery trustee. You get your name on the ballot, you get a little experience being a public figure, and then you use that as a stepping stone for state office. I would discourage, and I know this may upset some people, running for federal office is a waste of time. Do not do it, people. Stop doing that. I'm serious. I'm sorry, but I'm serious. You can run for state senate, you can run for state house, you can run for executive council. Executive council is sort of like a group of 5 people. I say they babysit the governor. Most states do not have that. It's sort of like a part of the executive branch that oversees contracts and appointments, and the governor sort of has to get their approval. So there's 5 positions, and they're districts throughout the state. And then maybe governor someday. Maybe somebody in the room is going to run for governor someday, right? There's a lot of things you can do at the state level because we're trying to utilize state sovereignty. I want to touch a little bit on campaigning versus governing, right? The point of campaigning is so that you can govern. If you run for office and do not get elected, you do not get to govern, and so you sort of had no lasting effect, right? So choose goals that are attainable, right? Someone running for president of the United States here in this audience, I'm probably going to doubt it a little bit, right? Like, that's not an attainable goal. So anyway, these are my thoughts. You're free to disagree. When you're involved in state politics, it's actually, I found it this way. I kind of started being very shy and afraid to speak in public, and I've gotten better at it. You know, I'm still developing my speaking, but I've noticed personal growth in me, and I think others probably noticed that too. It sort of helps you have a thicker skin, because you put a target on your back and people call you names. They write bad things about you in the paper. You know, they didn't like a vote that you took. And then in the beginning, you're kind of worried or upset. And then after a while, it becomes like a super strength where you don't care what they say. There's always going to be somebody that opposes you. There's always going to be somebody saying something against you because they don't like that you're making progress. So that's a personal growth thing. It teaches you to deliberate on complex issues, because when you sit in the State House and you have to push a button on all these different issues, after a while you start to slice and dice things that you would have never thought about. And if you do that for several years, you start to develop sort of like a sense of the issues that are in the entire state, right? People are all concerned about lots of different issues that you may have never gotten exposed to, but you do through public office. All right, I'm going to skip some of these things. I'm going to shorten my talk here based on how you guys look. I can see somebody's getting bored in the back there. And I'm just kidding, by the way. So you want to navigate the political process, right? You want to understand how laws get made. You want to understand the relationships that you need to cultivate to get your legislative goals across the finish line. It's not just a matter of putting in a bill and wishing it to succeed. You have to know which committee that bill is going to go to, who's the chairman of that committee, who are the decision makers in the minority party on that committee, right? How can you educate them on why this bill is a good idea? Who are the lobbyists that might be against your position, or who are the department heads that might be surprised by your position and reflexively oppose it, that you need to approach early and educate them on. And then it goes through the Senate, the same process continues again. So to govern and get our state policy initiatives across the finish line, it takes some skill. There's a little bit of chess involved when you're trying to get legislation across the finish line. So that's a learning aspect. All right. So we've had some legislative accomplishments in New Hampshire. And for the Free State Project, you know, I don't know who said it, that politics is downstream from culture. Was it Breitbart or somebody? I can't remember exactly who said it. I think it was Andrew Breitbart. So I think that's partially true. I think there's sort of like a yin and yang, like a flywheel effect, that policy can actually shape the culture as well, right? If we had a draconian policy become law all of a sudden, it would shape our culture. But vice versa could happen too. So we understand that policy, state policy, you know, can affect culture. But we've had successes on school choice. You know, we had a couple successes in the direction of universal education freedoms accounts, but we had a bad day 2 weeks ago where not all the people showed up to vote, right? So sometimes there's setbacks. So I like to think 2 steps forward, 1 step back, right? You always have to allow yourself for, you know, there's some retreat, or the progress might not go as quickly as you want it to. But again, it's relentless incrementalism. So relentless incrementalism, there's a term that the Chinese use. I don't know if anybody's heard this term. It's called salami slicing. salami slicing. As a man, that sounds kind of scary, but salami slicing is relentless incrementalism. So when you take a salami and you put it on the deli slicer, and you're slicing little slivers off of that, eventually that salami is going to be chopped into little pieces. So the Chinese use that term when they're dealing with Taiwan or India, and it's very effective. They're relentless. They think long-term about the progress that they want to make. We want to sort of borrow that attitude in the direction of liberty, is work to be relentless in our pursuit of liberty in New Hampshire. A couple more legislative accomplishments. Constitutional carry was put in a few years ago. We've had a bunch of tax reductions recently. So we got rid of the interest and dividends tax. That's going away. That went from 5%. It's going to go to 0. We've shaved a little bit off of the meals and rooms tax. So we've reduced that, I think, to 0.5%, which is, we could keep going, right? That's salami slicing. And then some business taxes we've reduced. So, that's just a very shorthand version of, we can make incremental progress and be relentless about it. All right. Don't be a flash in the pan. So we've had people, so again, we've been here 15 years. Sometimes people show up, they make a big deal, they get everybody's attention. They usually have a podcast. They get everybody's attention, and then they disappear after a couple years, right? So they misdirected 100 people maybe in the wrong direction that didn't go anywhere, didn't accomplish anything. Like, don't fall for that yourself, right? You want to have a long time horizon and effectively use your time and efforts to get policy goals accomplished. All right, I'm almost done here. The naysayers, the critics, and the haters, they can all get bent. They can all get bent. So I'm running for office. Somebody will probably clip out what I'm saying here, right, and use it in an ad against me. I've already made ads that that we moved here for the Free State Project. So do not be afraid of the critics. They're usually menopausal white ladies who get hysterical about things. That's usually who your enemies are. So don't worry about it. Feed their paranoia. Free Staters are everywhere. We are in every level of government. We are in local races. We're in government offices. Free Staters are everywhere. And the value of the Free State Project is a network of like-minded people who blanket the entire state and can feed each other information, help each other advance. It's the network that blankets the state that gives us the advantage. And we're really trying to keep New Hampshire from turning into Massachusetts. I mean, I think if the Free State movement didn't happen here, New Hampshire would be much further along with all the crazy policies and taxes that Massachusetts has. So we're trying to defend the live free or die ethos here in New Hampshire, but it's that network. So don't waste time arguing with people online. Like, please stop doing that. Like, if you are online arguing with people, that is a complete waste of time. Do not do it. That is my plea to you, right? So you put your ideas out there and you let them stand on their own. You're not changing anybody's mind arguing on Facebook or Twitter. There's a role, let's say you really don't like politics and you really hate politicians. There could be a role for monkey wrenching the other side, right? Somebody here might be good at that and be able to, stir up issues and complications for the other side, right? I think there's probably an organization waiting to be built in that direction. But everything legal, lawful, and honest. But again, you can feed the paranoia of our enemies. They literally. All right, in conclusion, we want to make New Hampshire the lifeboat in the country and the world. Legislative successes create a virtuous cycle for the FSP. So the more accomplishments we have with state policy and advancing liberty, the more people are attracted to the state. It affects the culture of the state. More liberty-minded people move up from Massachusetts. Fewer busybody, want to rule your life people don't move here from Massachusetts, right? So it can actually create a filtering effect, a virtuous cycle, if we focus on the goal of affecting state policy. We want New Hampshire to be the freest state, right? That's the Free State Project. So that concludes my talk, and the theme of it again was effective political action is required for New Hampshire to be the lifeboat. So with that, I'll take any questions or comments. If you want to argue with me, I'll be open to that too. Thank you.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. So I live in New Boston, great town. Thank you for your service. And before I came up here, I received a little card from some organization that was basically bad-mouthing the Pork Fest and saying that, the Free State Project is like, bringing a bunch of people in to ruin the state, and that they've got bears overrunning some town, and
they love that
some
bear story.
stuff like that. But I think that the interesting thing about the little video was that they had said that the Koch brothers had invested a lot of money and were behind people like you. So I just wanted to hear what you had to say about that.
No Koch money here.
Yeah.
So the left likes they villainize the Koch brothers. The right villainizes Soros, right? It's just part of the goofy back and forth, right? So billionaires give money to causes. They certainly do. As far as I know, I don't get any money from the Koch brothers. I wish I did. That would be awesome. Hey, James, long time no see.
Yeah, hey, Keith. To your last point about the opposition running a group against us.
Yeah.
We had on the Manchester Porcupine Signal group, Mr. Robertson has posted a link to their latest group. Okay. It's affiliated with Granite State Progress. They have another name for it, and I can't think of it. Yeah. But people among us who are not yet known to the opposition would have a chance to join that group. Yeah. And the recommendation is don't act like you're ideological at all and you're just a newcomer. Right. And
nothing wrong with keeping your mouth shut,
right?
right?
And you'd have a great chance to monkey wrench that way. Yeah, I like it. So yeah, associated with Granite State Progress, it's our longtime arch foe, and so look it up. Yeah, very good. Yeah, so they mail against Keith Ammon in New Boston. And every time they do, more and more people reach out to me and like, Keith, I'm a Free Stater too. So we have this network in town of all the people who got notified from their mailing. So it's like, what you resist persists, right? That's what they haven't figured out yet. Jason.
What's your view on message legislation? So if you get in there, how should you approach your job as a rookie legislator? Should you be filing bills that won't pass, but maybe it educates the legislature, or do you think that's a waste of time?
So I've done both. I've been on both sides of that. I think selective efforts may be positive. Both parties do it when it's campaign season, right? They want, all the Republicans voted against this, or all the so they use it in trying to promote their party in campaigns. So if you're on one team or the other, maybe there's some to that. If you put in a controversial bill, you'll get reporters nationally calling you, sometimes to write a hit piece against you, or right, I've been in all those situations. So yeah, I think there's a selective purpose for it, but we should be careful about doing something that makes everybody look not realistic. We want to have achievable goals for the most part. Sir.
Any insight into caucuses, internal groups, and informal structure inside the legislature itself? How does that work?
Yeah, so that's an interesting question. So a caucus So a party is a private organization, and a caucus in the State House is a private affair. So you have, all the Republicans get in a room, and they have a private caucus. Media's not allowed in, no recording, and you're really not supposed to talk about what happens in that caucus because it's like a football huddle, right? Everybody gets together to decide on their strategy, or let people know what's happening. And then within, or even across parties, there can be liberty caucuses, right? There's a NHLA caucus, that communicates quite a bit. And a caucus is generally for people in elected office and not so much for the outsiders, right? That's, but there's effective, so here's kind of what happens, right? Like, let's say you have a committee and the committee caucuses, and there's 11 people in the room. So those 11 people are going to decide what that committee decides. And generally what the committee decides, the whole House decides, right? So if you have 2 Liberty people in that 11 in that room, and they're talking to each other and making each other sound sane, and they can pull the caucus to their position, and that can have a ripple effect through the whole House, right? So the advantage, the more legislators that we have that are liberty-minded in New Hampshire state government, it sort of affects the direction of the institution, the internal culture, and and I've seen it happen, right? And most other states, you're going to be the only person in that room, right? So yeah, very good question. All right, no further questions? Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it.